at the scene in Cordova. Our crews have seen FBI and TBI agents going in and out of that house. The Shelby County Assessor's website lists this house as being owned by Lontrell Williams. That is the name of both Pooh Shiesty and his father. The rap star is in a halfway house right now after being released from federal...
Yo, picture this. April 1st, 2026, 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun ain't even fully up yet, and the feds hit a quiet family home in Cordova, Tennessee like it's a movie scene. Flashbangs popping, FBI and TBI agents swarming in and out for hours. Neighbors watching from their windows, phones out. Social media already on fire. But here's the part that's got everybody doing a double take. This wasn't just some random raid. According to multiple reports and sources close to the situation, this explosive operation is allegedly connected to one of the wildest plot twists in hip-hop history. Claims of a gunpoint confrontation involving Pooh Shiesty and none other than Gucci Mane himself. Wait, what? Yeah, you read that right. Whispers, leaked documents, and street talk are swirling around an alleged incident in a Dallas studio where things supposedly went from business meeting to straight chaos. AK-style pistol out. Contract papers on the table, watches and jewelry flying. Pooh was still under federal supervised release, just 10 days away from being completely done with the system. And now? The same house registered under the shared name Lontrell Williams, his and his father's, gets lit up at dawn. Y'all, is this the ultimate he was so close story? Or is there a whole deeper layer nobody's connecting yet? The internet is already in meltdown mode. Memes flying, theories everywhere. But before the rumors get too crazy, let me break it all the way down for you. Because this one is layered, it's messy, and it might just change everything we thought we knew about Pooh's comeback. Stick with me. This is about to get interesting. Now let's slow this down, because the headlines are loud, the internet is messy, and somewhere in the middle of all that noise is a story that people are trying to piece together in real time. According to public reports, online discussion, and details that started circulating after that early morning federal operation, Pooh Shiesty's name is once again sitting in the center of a storm that feels bigger than a regular artist setback. And what makes it hit harder is the timing. We are allegedly talking about somebody who was only days away from fully clearing the last stretch of federal supervision. Somebody whose comeback narrative was already being written for him. Somebody fans were ready to welcome back as the one who beat the odds. Then, out of nowhere, the energy flips. Flashbangs. Federal warrants. Family home. Silence from the team. And suddenly the whole internet is asking the same question. How did this go left so fast? That is what makes this story so gripping. It is not just about a rapper being mentioned in another legal mess. Hip-hop has seen that before. This one feels different because the narrative is almost too dramatic. You have a rapper whose rise was fast, explosive, and impossible to ignore. Pooh Shiesty came into the game with that raw Memphis energy that did not ask for permission. He did not feel manufactured. He felt immediate. The records hit hard, the image was strong, and the cosign from Gucci Mane made people think this was one of those rare street-to-star pipelines that might hold. For a minute, it looked like everything was lined up. The songs were moving, the buzz was crazy, and his name carried real weight. But with that rise came a reputation that never really left the conversation. Even before this latest situation, Pooh Shiesty's public image had already become tied to turbulence, legal trouble, and the kind of real-life controversy that follows an artist long after the music stops playing. Public records and past reporting had already put his name in connection with serious federal trouble years ago, and while parts of that story were resolved through the court system, the shadow of it never fully disappeared. That is important, because in cases like this, the public does not react to one incident in isolation. They react to a pattern. They react to what they think they know. So when people woke up and saw federal agents at a house connected to his family, they did not process it like random chaos. They processed it like another chapter in a saga that was already halfway written in their minds. And that is where the speculation starts getting dangerous, because once the internet decides a story makes sense, people stop waiting for facts. They start connecting dots with gasoline. Some commentators began pointing to his social media activity. Others brought up viral moments from his supervised release period. Then there were the people digging into old paperwork, old rumors, old affiliations, and trying to turn every post, every caption, every public appearance into some kind of clue. That is how online culture works now. A man posts a video, and suddenly everybody becomes a detective, a prosecutor, and a documentary producer all at once. One screenshot becomes evidence. One silence becomes proof. One delayed statement becomes confirmation. It gets ridiculous fast. Still, even with all the internet chaos, there are parts of this situation that naturally raise eyebrows. According to the information being widely discussed, the home involved in the raid was tied to the name Lantrell Williams, a name shared by both Pooh Shiesty and his father. Right there, the story splits into multiple lanes. Was the operation centered on him directly? Was it centered on someone else at that address? Was it about where he was physically supposed to be versus where he was reportedly seen? Or is there another layer still waiting to come out? Those questions matter, because they shape the entire tone of the fallout. If this was purely about supervision issues, that is one kind of headline. If it is tied to broader alleged criminal conduct, that becomes a different level of crisis. What has really sent the internet into overdrive, though, is the chatter that this situation may somehow connect back to Gucci Mane's orbit in a way nobody expected. Now let me be careful here, because this is exactly where people on social media start speaking in absolutes when they should be speaking in caution signs. There are reports, rumors, and online claims suggesting the new allegations may involve a music business conflict that escalated into something far more serious than a regular contract dispute. That alone is enough to make the culture stop scrolling. Because if you are talking about an artist allegedly getting tangled in a situation connected to the same industry machine that helped launch him, then the symbolism is crazy. It stops being just a legal story. It becomes a betrayal story. A downfall story. A you were almost out and then got pulled right back in story. And once betrayal enters the frame, the public imagination goes wild. People begin painting cinematic pictures in their head. They start turning whispers into scenes, scenes into motives, motives into verdicts. Suddenly everybody has a theory about pressure, money, loyalty, control. Bad contracts, bruised egos, and what allegedly happens when business and street energy get mixed in the same room. Half the internet is saying this is proof that success can turn into surveillance overnight. The other half is saying it is a cautionary tale about never really escaping the consequences of your earlier choices. Either way, the comeback story starts looking shaky. Because the same fans who were celebrating first day out energy are now staring at a headline cycle that makes it feel like freedom was rented, not owned. And that is the emotional center of this entire moment. Not guilt. Not innocence. The emotional center is how close he seemed to the finish line. That is what makes people lean in. But when the public believes a person was just days away from finally being done with the system, only for federal pressure to explode again, it creates a kind of tragic suspense that feels almost scripted. Almost too perfect. Almost like the universe looked at a comeback rollout and said, not so fast. So before we even get into the deeper rumors, the alleged studio angle, the whispers about who said what to whom, and why certain people online are acting like they know way more than they should, you have to understand this first piece clearly. The scandal is not hitting this hard just because of one raid. It is hitting this hard because it collides with everything already attached to Pooh Shiesty's name. The rise. The cosign. The federal history. The supervised release spotlight. The social media scrutiny. The comeback narrative. The silence. All of that is stacking on top of each other, and that is why the story feels explosive. Because once a reputation becomes bigger than the facts, every new development feels like confirmation. And that is exactly where this thing starts getting messier. And once it gets messier, that is when the internet does what it always does. It stops asking what is proven and starts asking what feels believable. And in this case, what feels believable to a lot of people is almost more powerful than the paperwork itself. Because the public is not just reacting to a name. They are reacting to a setup that sounds like pure chaos. A federal raid at dawn, a shared family address, a rapper allegedly under strict supervision, a comeback that was supposedly only days from becoming official, and now whispers that the whole thing may connect to a deeper industry conflict people never saw coming. That kind of story writes itself on social media. One post becomes 50 theories. One theory becomes 100 reaction clips. And before breakfast, the entire culture is arguing over a case most of them do not fully understand. That is where the temperature really rises. Because if you listen closely to the chatter, there are basically three camps forming in real time. The first camp says this is simple. The federal system never stopped watching, and the second he looked even slightly out of place, the hammer came down. The second camp says no. This feels bigger than a routine supervision issue. They think the energy around this story suggests something new, something more serious, something that allegedly reaches beyond a technical violation and into a full-scale new problem. And then you have the third camp, the one that always makes these stories explode the fastest. They think this is not just about him at all. They think the family address, the father angle, and the silence from everybody around him suggest a situation where multiple lanes may have crashed together at the worst possible moment. Now, let's sit with that silence for a second, because that may be the loudest part of the whole story. When something is fake, exaggerated, or easy to clear up, somebody usually speaks. Management leaks a statement. A lawyer says it's a misunderstanding. A cousin goes live. A label source starts texting blogs. Something moves. But when things go dead quiet, people notice. Fans notice. Whoops notice. Industry people definitely notice. And that silence starts creating its own narrative. It starts sounding like caution. Like legal strategy. Like nobody say a word until we know how bad this really is. And in the attention economy, silence is almost never neutral. Silence looks like smoke. Silence makes people think the fire is real. That is why the alleged studio angle has people so shaken. Again, I need to keep this careful, because online discussion moves way faster than confirmed records. But according to the reference you pasted and the way the story is being framed in discussion, people are zeroing in on the possibility that this was not some random spiral. They are talking like it may have been tied to business, contracts, pressure, and the ugly side of what happens when fame, money, ego, and control all get mixed together in the same room. And if that is even remotely close to what authorities believe happened, then this stops being a why was he in the wrong place conversation and becomes a how deep does this really go conversation. That is a totally different level of trouble. Because let's be honest, contract stories in rap already come with their own mythology. Fans love a betrayal arc. They love the idea that behind every hit song is a dirty deal, a broken promise, a tense studio session, a quiet fallout nobody wanted to explain in public. So the second Gucci Mane's orbit gets even loosely attached to this kind of chaos, the story becomes bigger than the people directly involved. It becomes symbolic. Suddenly, the blogs are not just talking about a raid. They are talking about mentorship gone wrong, loyalty collapsing under money pressure, and an artist allegedly reaching a point where the comeback no longer looks like a return, it looks like a standoff. Whether every piece of that online storytelling is fair or not almost does not matter in the moment, because perception is already outrunning fact. And perception is brutal when a person is already carrying a complicated public image. That is another reason this story is sticking so hard. If this exact same headline hit around an artist with a clean, soft, media-trained persona, people might wait for legal documents. They might say, let's not jump to conclusions. But when the artist is somebody whose image already includes turbulence, prior legal history, and a reputation for intensity, the audience fills in the blanks fast. They say, yeah, that sounds possible. And once the public says something sounds possible, it starts behaving like the thing is proven even when the details are still developing. Then add the social media factor on top of that, and now the whole thing becomes gasoline on a spark. Clips get reposted. Old lives get re-uploaded. People start freezing frames and reading body language like they are FBI interns. Somebody pulls up an older post and says, see? This was the clue. Somebody else points to a caption and says, he was telling us the whole time. That is what happens when the internet gets emotionally attached to a downfall narrative. It starts rewriting the past so that every earlier moment looks like foreshadowing. The parole officer call, the public bravado, the case talk, the visible confidence while still allegedly under supervision, all of it begins getting reinterpreted as warning signs. Not because everyone suddenly became an expert, but because hindsight always makes people feel smarter than they were in real time. And that is the tragedy of these comeback stories. The same energy that makes fans root for the return also makes them obsess over the collapse. They love First Day Out. They love the survival arc. They love the idea of somebody touching freedom and turning pain into momentum. But the second that arc cracks, the audience flips into documentary mode. Now they want the timeline. They want the hidden tension. They want the betrayal. They want the scene where everything supposedly changed. They want that one detail that turns a legal story into a movie. And this case, at least from the way it is being talked about, has all the ingredients for that kind of obsession. What makes it feel colder is that this is not even just a rap story anymore. It becomes a story about surveillance. About how little room there is for error once the federal system still has your name on a board somewhere. That part lands hard with people because it turns the whole thing into more than gossip. It becomes a warning. Move too loud and somebody is watching. Say too much and somebody is listening. Show the world you are back before the system believes you are clear, and you might be giving your own storyline extra evidence, extra tension, extra heat. Some reports and commentary around the case frame it exactly that way, not as a single reckless moment, but as a build-up of visibility, a pile of public signals that may have mattered more than people realized. The raid date, the Cordova address, the Dallas supervision issue, and the 10 days from full release angle are part of what made that framing go viral so fast. And while fans are debating whether this was self-sabotage, bad luck, or something much bigger, the industry side is watching for a different reason. Business people do not just see scandal. They see risk. They see delayed releases, frozen plans, damaged partnerships, nervous collaborators, quiet phones. They see a rollout collapsing in public. Because every comeback needs structure, and structure hates uncertainty. If your name is suddenly tied to headlines like this, even in an alleged or developing context, the machine around you slows down. Calls get postponed. Meetings disappear. Features get reconsidered. The room goes from how do we maximize this return, to how do we avoid getting splashed by this mess. That shift happens fast, and sometimes it happens before the public even sees it. So now the situation feels boxed in from every direction. Fans want answers. Blogs want drama. Lawyers want silence. Industry people want distance. And the people closest to the case, the ones who actually know the difference between rumor and exposure, are probably not in a mood to do public storytelling right now. Which means the vacuum gets filled by everybody else. Commentators. Clip channels. Half-informed insiders. Rival pages. Random accounts pretending to know somebody who knows somebody. And that is always when a story reaches its most dangerous stage. Not when the facts arrive, but when the facts are late and the imagination gets there first. Because once imagination gets there first, the damage starts long before any final outcome does. Reputations start bending. Loyalty starts looking shaky. Old allies start looking strategic. Every silence starts sounding intentional. Every old cosign starts feeling awkward. And the biggest question hanging over all of it is no longer just what happened. It becomes who knew this was coming, and who is already trying to get out of the blast zone. That is the question that changes everything. Because if part 1 was about the shock of the raid, then this next phase is about the ripple effect, and that ripple is where careers, alliances, and public trust start getting tested for real. And that is where the story stops feeling like a hot headline and starts feeling like a real collapse in motion. Because once the public starts hearing that this may not have been just a supervision issue, not just a technical slip, not just a father address mix-up, but something allegedly tied to a Dallas studio incident and a deeper labor-related conflict, the whole energy changes. According to the breakdown in your uploaded text, the later picture being discussed is that the bigger case was allegedly tied to trying to force a release from 1017, with robbery and kidnapping claims becoming the real bomb in the story, while the supervised release angle became more of a side lane. That is a completely different level of fallout. Because now the comeback is not just interrupted. It is contaminated. Every optimistic headline from a few weeks ago suddenly looks outdated. Every his almost free conversation starts sounding tragic. Every fan who was counting down to April 11th is now sitting there thinking, wait a minute. You mean to tell me the finish line was right there, 10 days away, and somehow the road still turned into this? That is the kind of twist people do not just watch. They obsess over it. They replay it. They argue about where the exact wrong turn happened. Was it the visibility? Was it the environment? Was it ego? Was it pressure from people around him? Was it old habits mixing with new opportunities? Or was it, as some people online are now saying, the ultimate example of how a person can look close to freedom on paper while still being miles away from freedom in real life? Because that is the ugly truth sitting underneath all of this. Federal supervision is not normal life. It is borrowed space. It is movement with conditions. It is public confidence paired with private restriction. And the second those two things stop matching, disaster starts creeping in. Your uploaded reference makes that point hard. After a federal sentence, a person may look free, but they are still under microscope, and public behavior can bring extra heat fast. That is why this story is hitting artists and fans differently than regular rap gossip. This is not just who said what drama. It is a brutal reminder that in hip-hop, the distance between a comeback and a setback can be one decision, one wrong room, one wrong alliance, one false sense of safety. The crowd sees jewelry, cars, flexing, captions, and the loud confidence of a man rebuilding his image. What they do not always see is how fragile that image really is when legal. Pressure is still hovering in the background. 1 minute people are calling you resilient. The next minute, the same people are using your story as an example of self-destruction. And maybe that is the coldest part of all this. Not whether the internet is overreacting, but how fast the internet moves from celebration to autopsy. The same culture that screams welcome home will turn around and start narrating your downfall like it was inevitable. They will say the signs were always there. They will say the red flags were obvious. They will act like they knew. But in real time, most people were not seeing a collapse. They were seeing a return. They were seeing momentum. They were seeing a name trying to climb back into position. That is why the twist lands so hard. Not because the public expects trouble from rap stars, but because people thought this chapter was supposed to end differently. And once that illusion breaks, everybody around the artist starts getting judged too. The circle gets questioned. The management gets questioned. The mentors get questioned. The label relationships get questioned. The family dynamic gets questioned. Suddenly, the entire ecosystem becomes part of the conversation. Who was actually protecting the brand? Who was helping him move smart? Who was letting him feel untouchable? Who saw the pressure building and said nothing? Those questions may not all be fair, but they are guaranteed to come, because public scandal never stays neatly attached to one person for long. It spreads through association. That is especially true when the father angle is still part of the storyline. Your uploaded notes highlight how powerful that shared name confusion was in making the story feel even more twisted, because the house was registered under name shared by Pooh Shiesty and his father, and that ambiguity made people wonder who the real target was at first. Then the updated framing turned the whole thing from mystery into something much darker, because now it looked less like who were they after, and more like how much of this was already in motion before the public knew anything. And that question changes the emotional ending of the story. Because in part 1, the shock was the raid. In part 2, the shock was the ripple effect. But here in part 3, the real shock is what this might represent. A lot of rap stories are about excess. Some are about betrayal. Some are about legal trouble. But the ones people remember are the stories where the person was right on the edge of a different future and still fell anyway. That is the kind of story that lives forever in comment sections, podcasts, and documentaries. Not just because it is dramatic, but because it makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to ask whether success actually changed anything or just gave the old chaos better lighting. And that is where this whole thing starts turning into a warning bigger than one name. Because whether somebody is a fan of Pooh Shiesty or not, the pattern is familiar. A talented figure rises fast, gets caught in the system, comes home with expectations on his back, tries to reclaim the moment, and then the pressure of reputation, scrutiny, and environment starts closing in from all sides. Some survive that stretch. Some do not. Some move like they understand the microscope. Some move like the applause means the microscope is gone. And that confusion can be fatal to a comeback even before a court says anything final. So when people say this story feels bigger than a normal arrest headline, that is why. It is not just the names. It is not just the alleged studio chaos. It is not just the federal language. It is the emotional math of it. 10 days. One family address. One already fragile comeback. One internet ready to build a whole documentary before the dust even settles. Your uploaded reference literally called that the timing bomb. And that phrase fits perfectly, because the timing is what turns a messy case into a story people cannot stop clicking. And now the only thing left is the part nobody can control. What comes next? Because this is the stage where every new detail hits harder than the last one. Every court update changes the tone. Every silence grows heavier. Every leaked detail makes the earlier speculation look smarter or sillier. And until the full legal picture is clear, the future stays hanging there, music in limbo, freedom in question, reputation under pressure, and a comeback story that may have just turned into a cautionary tale. So here is the real question. Was this the moment everything finally caught up, or is there still another twist coming that the public has not seen yet? Drop your take below. Do you think the warning signs were obvious, or do you think the internet only became brave after the raid? And most importantly, do stories like this prove that some artists come home too early in the public eye, before they are actually clear in the system? Stay locked in, because this one clearly is not over. Before you go, drop your take in the comments because this story has the whole internet split wide open. Do you think Pooh Shiesty was really on the verge of a clean comeback, or were the warning signs there the whole time and fans just ignored them? And with all these alleged twists around the raid, the timing, and the bigger fallout, Is this just another rap headline, or the kind of downfall story people will be talking about for years? Hit like if you want more deep breakdowns like this. Subscribe if you're into real-time drama, rap chaos, and the stories behind the headlines. And turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update. Because if more details drop, you already know we are coming right back here to break it all down.